And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called Rule the Realm. Not Roll the Realm, Rule the Realm. And this one was brought to my attention by a viewer who I was talking about rubber bands and connecting them to dots, and someone said, this game does that. And I was like, wow, it's pretty neat. I hadn't heard of this one at all. Apparently it's based on an older game, not an older game, but a slightly older game, a German game, and this is the American release, but I hadn't heard of it. Done by Pressman. Looks like a mass market style game. So I played it, and here's how it goes. In this game, you're going to be playing a scenario, and there are 8 different scenarios. Jungle temples, volcano, city on the isles, plateau images, ancient ruins, cursed triangle, demanding deities, and labyrinth. Some of them have quite a few extra rules compared to the base rules of the game, and each map comes with 3 different setups. One for 2 players, one for 3 players, and one for 4 players. So you'll take the one for the number of players that you're playing, and you'll place it on the board like thus. Each player has a starting piece here. You have a round tracker in case you need to keep track of rounds. Some of the scenarios do that. Players have a starting hand of cards, as well as some cards next to the board. As well as players have a whole pile of bands of their colors. On a player's turn, they have 2 actions. You can do the same action more than once. And there are 2 different actions to pick from. One of the actions is drawing cards. When drawing cards, you draw 2 cards. You can draw 2 face up, and then they're replaced at the end of your drawing action, or you can draw a face up and a face down, or 2 face down. It's up to you. The cards are going to be matching different colors and shapes on the board. The other action is playing cards to put a band out on the board. Now, some of the scenarios allow different ways to put bands out, but for most scenarios, there are 2 different ways to put bands out. You can put a band around 2 pegs like that. You can put one, or you can make a triangle, and you can make a diamond like that. Now, the way that each of this works is when you make one of these, you have to pay a card for each peg you use. So a green, an orange, and a gray. Unless you already have a rubber band around that one, then you don't have to pay that anymore. Now, if another player wants to use one of your pegs, let's say pink comes through and does this, pink would have to pay me the gray card since I already have one on it. If there's multiple players there, you pick which one you give the card to. Now all your stuff has to attach, so this is the only way this could work, where I'm attaching. You have these starting pegs that you come from. Whenever you make a grouping, you're going to get everything inside it, which is, if it's blue, you get these crystals. And the main use for these crystals is whenever you have 3 of them, you can spend those 3 once per turn to get an extra action. And then points. Also, let's say I made a triangle here, for example. I get everything inside that triangle, but then since I've completely surrounded this area here, I get everything in that area too. And in fact, in some games, that's the whole point, is to move around and make big groupings of areas. Now, in most games, you're trying to get to 18 points. First person to get to there is the winner. But there are other options. Some games will be the number of rounds, and some games have you doing, putting out things in different ways. Here's some of the other maps for the game. That's map number 1. This is map number 3. Here's map number 2, the volcano. And the maps really have a cool look to them. So the map quality is good. The rubber bands is where people are I've already seen complaints about these from people who haven't played it. They work pretty well for me. They stretch pretty well. I think you could break them, but the fact of the matter is you get way more than you're ever going to use over the course of a game, as far as I can tell. So even if some break, you're fine. My wife says that these are pretty cheap, inexpensive things to buy for girls, for their hair. These are ones that you would buy because girls tend to lose them, little girls lose them. So I suppose you could just go get a pile of another color if you wanted to. The card quality is okay. I mean, I do like that they have different symbols and shapes. So if you can't tell apart green and red, it's a square and a circle. So I like that. I think the boards are beautiful. It fits around the blue peg board really easily. The rules are written fairly well. and there's 8 different scenarios. This is not, I mean, my biggest complaint would be I don't like the size of this box, this long box. But other than that, the components were much better than I thought. Folks, this is one of the times I wish my wife liked to do videos with me, because she would tell you, and as she told me, that she loves this game. She really liked it. I like it a lot too, but not as much as she did. She's a big fan of Ticket to Ride, and she said this gives her the same feel because you're connecting all your bands, you're collecting cards, paying those cards to build out your area on the board. I think it scales really well because of the maps, the 2, the 3, the 4. That's neat. And there's not a lot of differential maybe between games, like you're just trying to collect cards and build out there. You want to move out as fast as you can. In the original game, the first person to cross to the other side of the board gets a bonus. There was one game where we were trying to build big areas and then enclose as much as we could in a big area before 8 rounds were over. But that's where I think I'm pretty happy with this game, because it is essentially a fairly basic setup. Collect cards, use those cards, put out rubber bands, a little bit of interaction with other players, try to cut them off from getting the areas you want. But there's 8 different scenarios. That's a lot of content. This feels like an expansion, like this is the base game and then there's an expansion. Now there's 8 different scenarios and they each have different rules. You can play this 8 different times with different ways, and I think you can play those each one multiple times. So for me, there's a lot of content in here. I like the stretching rubber bands around the pegs. I think that's fun. It is a gimmick, but it's a gimmick that works. Even some of the theming worked with it, like one's an archaeological dig. And not a pronunciation gig, obviously. But you are placing these things to cordon off areas that you are digging in. Well, that makes sense. And it gives just that right tension and balance as I'm trying to outplay the other people. And you move around at the beginning of the game. You start on your side and you're building your stuff, but you see your opponents coming towards you, and you think, do I want to shoot out there as fast as I can? One of the things that you can do, I didn't show you, is you can do a long one that's on 3 pegs, so you can shoot out really far. It doesn't enclose anything, but you can shoot out to maybe grab stuff out in the middle before other people. And each board has the point and these crystal spreads. And the crystals are great too, because you get 3 of them, it gives you an extra action. In this game, extra actions are king. If you're playing an 8-round game, you only have 16 actions. So every 3 crystals you get is an extra action added to that 16. So I know this is not going to appeal to many people, but I found it to be very well done. It's not the greatest of qualities, but it's good enough for what I wanted to do. It's also good enough that I saw this on Amazon. Someone might randomly buy it, and I think they're going to have a lot of fun with it. So that's Rule the Realm. Very gimmicky, but a game that I found fun despite that. Dice Tower Judgment approved.